Up, welcome back. It is Bones, and in this one, let's go ahead and talk about New York Toy Fair 2025. Now, this recently went down over the weekend. Saw a lot of cool stuff from different companies. People got their first hands on the Maximum Profit Spider-Man from Marvel Legends. And among other notable things, we did see new product from a full array of different companies. Now, you know that I'm basically mostly interested in McFarlane because, of course, as of now, he still has the DC license. He did show off a couple of things like some new Mortal Kombat, some Ninja Turtles, which he seems pretty excited to get a crack at for the first time. Now, although those are not going to be spectacular, they're very interesting to take a look at. And you never know, depending on how they finally look, we may end up picking them up. But I'm more, as you know, I'm more centered around DC and DC characters. Now, I do want to get into some reveals, some rumors, hear from McFarlane himself, and also discuss what Mattel may pick as the scale for their DC figures once they take over the reins of the license in the later part of 2026. Now, of course, it was a full show. McFarlane was showing Spawn, statues, t-shirts, which are pretty interesting if you want to check those out on his toy store website. Of course, the superpowers line will continue for now. He showed some Super Friend characters that he's going to put out, and his whole array of IPs that he is running. So, really interesting. You can find some videos on the tube to check out and see the full display. Now, I was going to do this video earlier, but I wanted to wait just to make sure we got all the information we could get from the full weekend, and we did find out a little bit of spicy details, so we'll get into those. Now, we did have some very interesting reactions. You can tell a lot of this stuff in the comment sections when you see videos pop up about the toy fair and when they show the reveals from McFarlane. Now, you had a lot of negative, feedback, which was pretty much like the company's already dead, who cares? Or this company is a dead man walking. But you also had some positive feedback with the reveals and a lot of stuff we heard from McFarlane himself. People saying that as soon as McFarlane loses a license, they're going to stop collecting DC because to them, Mattel sucks, which was pretty interesting to hear. I did notice that you started to hear a lot of people say how much they'll miss McFarlane's DC line, and it was barely getting good, and we're getting all the characters that we want now, and sad that it's going to end after a year and a half. And of course, you have the other side, which was saying that they're glad McFarlane lost the license. They can't wait until Mattel gets in there. Pretty much saying a bunch of stuff that we need to wait until everything gets, finished out, gets ironed out before we know all of the details of what is going to happen with the whole DC action figure lines and properties. We'll have to wait for the final word. Now, it was kind of funny to hear people kind of acting like the line is already done, like this week it's going to be over, which was pretty hilarious because, of course, we know McFarlane is not going to roll over and die just because he lost the DC license. He's going to keep making figures, keep, running his toy company. We even heard it from himself that he's a survivor. His company is a survivor. They're going to keep putting out product no matter in what form that may be. And he even did hint that it may still even include DC. So We just got to wait and see how this all plays out. Now, if you think the line's over, that's it, you're not even going to let McFarlane finish out his whole year. I mean, people that think that, I don't know if they're dealing in beads or what, but they are definitely misguided. I do have a small clip. You can look for this on YouTube and see the whole interview. But let's go ahead and hear from McFarlane himself.
Here's what I'll say, because there's still a lot of details to be ironed out, and we'll see how it goes. Is, you know, we're still doing it. We're going to be doing it, so our contract runs out. It's not like people are acting like the contract's over this week.
No,
it's not true. We still got a long runway before it gets there. But in having conversations with Warner Brothers and even Mattel, and like everybody wants the same goal, right? Nobody wants a disruption. Nobody wants to not deliver the plan that each one of the companies wants, and to deliver to the consumer, and in this case to the fan base, right? That's the goal that everybody's shooting for. Everybody's acknowledging it, and there's still things to be determined before anything sort of big happens. So again, it wouldn't have been my choice. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I've been in business long enough to know that you hit curveballs, right? And this is just a curveball, and we're gonna figure it out, right? Myself personally and my company, we're just survivors, right? We now, this is our 31st toy fair, and we have had ebbs and flows the whole way, and we're still here, right? We're like, it'll work, and we're gonna be in the DC business. Like, that's a guarantee. We're gonna be in the DC business. It's gonna alter, but we're gonna be in the DC business in some fashion, and that's sort of what we're debating right now. And when everybody has those details, will come out. So we're not going away. Okay. We're not going away.
Now, first thing you must understand is that a year plus change is a lot of time for McFarlane. He kind of averages above 50 figures a year. So tack on a little bit of extra overtime, and you're going to hopefully see McFarlane release almost 100 figures before the license is done. He will also continue to release vehicles. Now, we did hear that they're going to be releasing a Batmobile from Batman Rebirth, so that is something that we know is going to be made. They did see the prototype behind the scenes, as well as leading on that there will be more vehicles, hopefully from Batman v Superman, and maybe even we'll finally get that Batwing from Batman v Superman, which will be awesome. Now, speaking of reveals, we did see a lot of upcoming action figures. We saw a pretty sweet looking Supergirl. Finally, the Silver Age version of Superman, which looked pretty awesome, as well as a couple of Batman figures that will be coming out. Plus, we also saw glimpses of the highly anticipated, I know a lot of people were waiting for it, but Hawkgirl, Jim Gordon, Hourman, Starman. You even have a version of the Atom, I think Damage, which looked pretty awesome, as well as a glimpse at the next 2-pack of the Monsters versus Justice League, which will be Superman versus Godzilla 2-pack. They had a pretty nice looking Superman that had the body of the Earth 2 Superman with a different, darker color scheme, which had a kind of crazy yelling head, but of course you could swap out heads and make your definitive Superman with these colors. Now, once again, we do know that McFarlane has a good amount of time to release a lot of characters that people have been clamoring for. I mean, in all honesty, McFarlane could release a lot of different characters, different versions of heroes, but we do know that no matter what he does release, it's not going to be enough for everybody. Everybody's still going to be wanting more characters.
Cause you freaking fricks just can't ever be quenched. Your fantasies can't ever be quenched, can they?
Now, another thing to note that McFarlane said was that the details are still not fully done with Mattel, with Warner Brothers. He did say that he has had meetings with both, and they're trying to figure out how they can all work together to get the consumer what the consumer wants. So it's still pretty much on the fence of what's going to happen with McFarlane because, as we know, he owns DC Direct now. He runs that part of the Warner Brothers division. Back in the day when Mattel first had the DC license and they were doing DC Universe Classics, at the same time you had DC Direct, which was a subdivision of Warner Brothers, and they were releasing 7-inch, but they would also release 6-inch figures. And although they had limited articulation, they were some of the most interesting and, figures that were based on stuff that real collectors wanted. So they might be able to work something out. Whereas McFarlane, who runs DC Direct, can still have page punchers and the statues, while Warner Brothers concentrates on the retail line. Now, you still got to figure out how that would work because, of course, if you remember, while DC Universe Classics was sold at retail, you would have to look for DC Direct figures more like at your specialty shops, Spencer's, or mainly at your local comic book store. Now, I noticed something this weekend when I went out hunting, and that was that it was real interesting to see, Hasbro Marvel Legends, and then right in between there, they had the McFarlane statues, the, little figurines that he's making based on Marvel characters. And then next to that, you would have McFarlane's DC Multiverse. So it was kind of weird because people that would shop there would probably think that those statues were from the same company that makes the Marvel Legends. I'm not so sure they would really know right away that they were really from the DC Multiverse side. So, I mean, a little bit of conflict of interest there. I don't know if maybe even if that had something to do with the final decision of moving the license over to Mattel, but we'll never know. That is something in the back rooms. Now, another thing I looked at when I was out there on the weekend in the wild was I grabbed a couple of Masterverse figures, of WWE figures from Mattel, and I went around and matched them up with Marvel Legends. And interestingly enough, not even the smallest female WWE figure would match up with Marvel Legends. Marvel Legends still look like itty bitty little toys compared to the WWE figures. And Masterverse, forget about it because that is a true 7-inch line. Now that brings me into what scale is Mattel gonna go with? Now, of course, there's two sides of this coin. Both have their pros and cons, and we're not gonna be able to know until they finally reveal their first figures, or maybe they'll put out a statement of what scale they're gonna go with. Now, of course, you have a lot of people, a big contingency of collectors that want them to go 6-inch. Of course, this is going to be mainly your Hasbros or people that collect 6-inch, which they've been wanting a long time to get an updated DC line that has newer figures with better articulation in the smaller 6-inch scale. Now, people could say that would benefit them because you're going to get all of those collectors to buy into your line. But where I have to kind of, put my 2 cents in that is that McFarlane did just fine without those, 6-inch collectors. He made a profit, he put out a lot of product, and he went out on a limb when he decided to go 7-inch. So it's very interesting that over this time, Mattel has become pretty much a 7-inch scale line. I don't really see them going back down to 6-inch. Now, of course, I could be wrong. I don't know for sure. But if they ever want to do, I remember that when they were doing DC Classics and Masters of the Universe Classics, they put out some really nice 2 packs, Superman and He Man, Skeletor and Lex Luthor. It was pretty nice to see these two different universes in the same package. And I think it's really beneficial for Mattel to go with the 7-inch scale for a couple of reasons. Now, the main reason would be that they would be able to do crossovers with WWE, with Masters of the Universe, making some 2 packs. The other thing is that they would be keeping their same, collectors that are collecting McFarlane would continue to collect this new Mattel line. Now, they don't even have to be specifically the same style of figure. They could do it in their own Mattel style, but you would be able to mix and match, add some characters, keep it open to characters that we never got, like the Metal Man and a lot of the Green Lantern Corps. And also, you would be able to use the vehicles from McFarlane with your new Mattel 7-inch figures. And finally, the main reason Mattel should go 7-inch is to hear all of the screams from the 6-inch collectors. Now, for me, it would be very entertaining to hear the screams, over the interwebs on why Mattel would decide to go with a 7-inch scale for their new DC line.
Fritz! When will you learn? When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
Now, once again, I don't know. This is all opinion and speculation. We never know what a company's going to do. So there is benefits to going 6-inch, but there's also positives to going 7-inch. Another benefit they would have by going with 7-inch is that they already have a lot of the tooling for some of the weapons and arms and legs that they could use with the new DC line, and they wouldn't have to retool to go back down to 6-inch. But once again, don't know what's going to happen. I'll be honest with you, it wouldn't really matter to me. If they went 6-inch, I'll look at them and see, if they're any good, and then I would, decide if I wanted to purchase them. But if they went 7-inch, it would be really awesome. One thing for sure, it would mean new content, new figures, new figure photography, new displays, all of which are great for us as collectors. Because for me, I will always stay collecting DC characters, DC product. But in the end, it wouldn't affect me really. They could go with 6-inch, that would be fine. But they could also go with 7-inch. Once they put out the first images or release the first statement of which scale they're going to go with, then we can finally start deciding if it's going to be something that we're going to be interested in purchasing. I will be very interested to see with what Mattel comes out with and then decide after that. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about all this down below in the underground. But as always, keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.